If you're the type who jumps into Diablo 4 thinking just one more dungeon, and before you know it, hours have passed farming loot, testing builds, and destroying everything in your path, this video is for you. Because as addictive as Diablo 4 is, the truth is there are several new games emerging that drink from that same well, some leaning more into brutal action, others into insane progression, and some even bringing interesting ideas I'd like to see in Diablo. So today, I've set aside 10 new games and early access titles that every Diablo 4 fan should know. I'm Matthew, and the video starts now. If you loved Diablo 4, Path of Exile 2 is one of those games that truly deserves to be on your radar immediately because it takes the dark fantasy of the ARPG and transforms it into something even more ambitious, heavy, and build-obsessed. Currently in early access, released on December 6th, 2024 by Grinding Gear Games, it features online co-op for up to 6 players and a new journey through Rayclast to face a resurging corruption. The game doesn't try to be just another Diablo rival, as the proposal is massive from the start. The final vision includes a campaign with 6 acts, 100 distinct environments, 600 monsters, and 100 bosses, while the current early access version already delivers a significant 4-act campaign with a robust endgame. For those coming from Diablo 4, this is important because Path of Exile 2 feels like a more hostile, cruel, and methodical world where every area seems to test your combat reading rather than just your skill rotation. I think this grittier tone resonates perfectly with those who enjoy the feeling of entering a map and knowing any mistake could be costly. Now, where it really begins to separate itself from the competition is in character construction, as the game features 240 skill gems, 200 support gems, and a passive tree with 1,500 nodes, plus a dual specialization system to switch build focuses depending on the weapon or skill type used. The detail I like most is that support gems now slot directly into skill gems, simplifying a tedious part of the original Path of Exile without killing the depth fans' love. Even in early access, there is plenty of room to experiment, with 6 base classes and 12 ascendancies available, including Sorceress, Warrior, Ranger, Witch, Mercenary, and Monk, each with 2 specializations at this initial stage. It's also worth mentioning the loot and endgame, because that's where many Diablo 4 players will feel that immediate click of, okay, this is actually addictive. The game features 700 base equipment types, new weapons like spears, crossbows, and flails, plus an endgame with various areas, powerful crafting, unique encounters, and special passive trees that increase both the reward and the difficulty of maps. To me, this is the kind of structure that turns Path of Exile 2 into a game to play for dozens or hundreds of hours, not just for the campaign, but for the constant drive to refine your build until it becomes an absolute machine. I would say Path of Exile 2 is exactly the kind of game a Diablo 4 fan needs to know when the urge hits for something more complex, darker, and more generous in build possibilities. If Diablo 4 won you over with its atmosphere and combat, Path of Exile 2 has everything to hook you with its depth, variety, and that delicious feeling that there's always an even more broken way to play.
I must be the one to face this nightmare.
No noose this time. I'll remove your head myself!
But I need not do it alone.
Developed by Moon Studios, the same geniuses behind Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisps, No Rest for the Wicked combines the classic isometric camera of ARPGs you know with a heavy, precise, and brutal combat system that feels much more like Dark Souls than Diablo. And look, when I say brutal, I'm being kind. Combat here isn't about clicking like crazy and watching the screen explode. Every strike must be calculated, every dodge requires timing, and if you waste stamina by being too aggressive, a common enemy will teach you a lesson in humility in seconds. The system is entirely animation-driven, meaning every attack has weight, and every parry feels satisfying. You aren't a god of the battlefield like in Diablo 4. You are a vulnerable adventurer who needs to read enemies, learn patterns, and survive with intelligence. And believe me, the feeling of overcoming a difficult encounter hits differently. Beyond combat, the game features a city called Sacrament that acts as your main hub. And as you progress through the story, it literally grows and evolves around you. The narrative revolves around a pestilence destroying the world, and all the game's factions seek solutions in completely different ways, creating well-constructed internal and external conflicts. The visual presentation is jaw-dropping. Moon Studios developed a technology called Curved World that smoothly curves the 3D map around the player, creating dynamic scenes and visual depth rarely seen in isometric games. Another point worth highlighting is that the game has been in early access on Steam since April 2024, but that doesn't mean it's incomplete or abandoned. Moon Studios released massive updates called The Crucible, The Breach, and The Breach Refined throughout 22,425, each adding significant content and polish. The biggest update so far was the Together update, released in January 2026, which added co-op for up to 4 players, completely transforming the experience for those who enjoy playing with friends. All that said, No Rest for the Wicked is not a Diablo 4 replacement, and doesn't try to be. It is a completely different experience using the same isometric camera to deliver something much denser, more personal, and more challenging. Build diversity is deep, the art direction is spectacular, and the sense of progression will easily hook you for 30 to 40 hours of content, with much more planned for the future. If you are willing to trade the frenetic loot loop for something that makes you truly feel every victory, this game deserves your attention. If you played Diablo 4, faced Lilith, and thought you had saved Sanctuary once and for all, I'm sorry to say, but you were very wrong. Diablo 4, Lord of Hatred is the game's second major expansion, announced at the Game Awards in December 2025, and it brings to the table the confrontation the franchise has been building toward for decades. The final showdown against Mephisto, the Lord of Hatred himself. What makes this even more insane is that Lilith returns from the dead to be part of this story, meaning the narrative won't give you a second to breathe. The expansion arrives on April 28th, 2026 for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. And you can already feel that Blizzard is going all out to make this the most epic chapter of the saga. One of the biggest additions in Lord of Hatred is the arrival of the Skovos region, a completely new territory within Sanctuary never explored in Diablo 4 before. Skovos is the land of the Amazons, and anyone familiar with the franchise's lore knows this is one of the richest and most dangerous places in the Diablo universe. You will explore this region while trying to contain Mephisto's dark plan, which threatens not only Sanctuary, but the heart of everything built so far. The level of detail Blizzard put into this new map features that sense of discovery every action RPG fan loves. The feeling of turning a corner and not knowing what comes next. This is a historic moment for fans. The Paladin has finally returned to Diablo, and it is one of the 2 new playable classes in the expansion. This character was one of the most beloved in Diablo 2, and the community had been asking for its return for years. The second class is the Warlock, confirmed after the initial announcement, and together with the Paladin, they form a duo designed to cover completely opposite playstyles. The Paladin arrives with a system called Oath, which basically defines your fighting style as a holy knight. Those who pre-ordered the expansion already had access to the Paladin now to play in Season 11, which is quite a gift for those who missed the class. Lord of Hatred isn't just a story expansion, it's a revolution for the game. All 8 classes are receiving complete skill tree reworks, with new skill variants for each, along with an increase in the level cap. The Heradric Cube is back, bringing a new item crafting system to satisfy those players who live for min-maxing builds. Furthermore, the endgame has been completely overhauled. You can now build your own progression roadmap, choosing between pit tiers, world bosses, infernal hordes, and even a surprising fishing mechanic that generates rare elixirs and cosmetics. And for those who have always struggled to find the right loot, a loot filter has arrived to facilitate the process. It's the type of update that makes you want to start a character from scratch just to experience it all. Lord of Hatred looks to be the expansion that will redefine the legacy of Diablo 4. With 2 new equipment set bonuses via the new talisman, new activities, the return of beloved characters like Lorath, and a narrative that finally closes the Mephisto arc the franchise started decades ago, it's impossible not to get excited. The standard expansion costs $40 and already includes the first expansion, Vessel of Hatred, with the Spiritborn in the Nahantu region, making the package much more generous than it seems. If you've spent hours in Sanctuary hunting loot, reworking builds, and wanting more endgame depth, Lord of Hatred was made specifically for you. April 2026 cannot come fast enough. Necromage is an isometric ARPG that doesn't have a release date yet, but is already making a lot of noise among lovers of dark, loot-filled games. The premise is direct and irresistible. You are a necromancer who wakes up from underground with the goal of reclaiming a world corrupted by death and chaos. But unlike other ARPGs where the necromancer is just one of the classes, here it is the entire game. Every mechanic, every system, every choice was designed around this. You rise from the underworld, collect corpses across the battlefield, transform them into ectoplasm, and use this resource to summon your troops, grow your army, and dominate the dungeons that appear in your path. The game features a minion faction system. It's not just skeletons everywhere. You have 5 completely different factions: skeletons, bloodseekers, demons, humans, and monsters. Each has unique abilities, and you can choose to focus on one or mix them freely to create absurd combinations. Additionally, minions have 3 rarity levels: common, elite, and leader, and you can equip each with handcrafted spells forged with items separate from the hero's equipment. This means crafting here has real depth, not just cosmetic flair. Hero progression also has its own weight, with 5 skill layers: basic, passive, core, advanced, and ultimate. Every choice shapes your playstyle differently, and the loot you find pushes this customization even further, as hero items can be recycled into crafting materials when they are no longer useful. This link between loot, crafting, and minion development creates a progression loop that seems designed to addict anyone who enjoys feeling their character become increasingly powerful with every dungeon. Have you ever stopped to think what it would be like if Diablo 4 had that same tension of, I need to get out of here before I lose everything, but in a way that affects not just the character, but their mind within the game? Because that's exactly the crazy proposal Studio Nemo is putting into Void Diver, Escape from the Abyss. It is a 2.5D pixel art extraction action RPG published by Load Complete, where the city you knew was swallowed by forces from another dimension and transformed into a monstrous, endless dungeon. You aren't the hero who descends to save the world. You are the manager of an antique shop called Belusha, and it's your job to send the divers down there, hope they come back alive, and sell what they bring. The concept of extraction here works in a way that will make any Diablo 4 fan rethink what they expect from a dungeon crawler. It's not just about killing and grabbing loot. You have to find specific artifacts, including super scientific devices and forbidden magical relics, and escape with your life. Every expedition is a gamble. The deeper you go, the more valuable the items, but the heavier the pressure. And if you die before extracting, you lose everything you were carrying. This sense of real risk in every dive into the abyss is the heart of the game, and it creates a tension that Diablo 4 alone never quite delivered in the same way. The mechanic that impressed me most was mental pressure. Dungeons here don't just consume your HP, they consume your diver's sanity. When stress hits the limit, strange things start happening around the character. Unexplained phenomena that change the combat dynamics. And there's more. There is the Paradox Curse system, a curse you bring back from the dungeon that persists even after the expedition ends. In other words, the dungeon goes home with you. This is disturbing in a way few ARPGs dare to try. The combat itself is hard-boiled, a word the studio uses that fits like a glove. It is sophisticated, impactful, real-time action set in the ruins of a city that feels familiar but is completely distorted. You can go alone or call up to 3 friends in online co-op, and each character has unique skill trees, traits, weapons, accessories, and relics to build your way. The enemies you face are as strange as the setting. Monsters from another dimension, uncontrolled machines, urban legends come to life, and humans who lost their sanity down there. It's exactly the kind of diverse threat that makes every dungeon area feel different from the last. The full version of the game is planned for 2026. Without a specific date yet, but the demo is already available for free on Steam right now and is the best way to feel this atmosphere in practice. If you've spent hundreds of hours in Diablo 4 and are looking for something that takes the dungeon, loot, and build loop and adds a real layer of risk and psychological horror, Void Diver deserves your attention today. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if Diablo 4 decided to ditch the isometric camera and put you inside the character's helmet, looking into the eyes of demons before destroying them? Well, Strayamon Studio, the same studio behind the cult classic EY, Divine Cybermancy, and Warhammer 40k titles like Space Hulk, Deathwing, and Necromunda Hired Gun, answered that question with Daimon Blades. It is a brutal first-person slasher that mixes the depth of an action RPG with the replayability of a roguelite, and it has been available in Steam Early Access since October 2025. Saying it has first-person Diablo 4 vibes isn't an exaggeration. Game Rant used exactly that comparison when covering it. The story begins with you as a member of the Secreta, an order of hunters following a corrupted leader called the Hermit into the depths of chaos. Interestingly, this narrative takes place 2 millennia before the events of EY. Divine Cybermancy, meaning it is an origin, a prequel that goes deep into the brutality, blood, and sacrifice that shaped this universe. This isn't a noble hero's campaign, it's vengeance, betrayal, and a descent into the abyss, which reminds me a lot of the dark, unromantic atmosphere of Diablo stories when they are at their best. The standout feature is the Daimon weapons, living weapons that evolve with you during each expedition. Every strike you land feeds the weapon, making it more powerful and simultaneously more corrupted. This creates interesting internal tension because the more you use the power of the Daimons to survive, the more you become one of them. Alongside this, there is crafting, loot, resources, and a permanent meta progression system. So even if you die in a run, not all is lost. You come out stronger for the next descent. Environments are generated with infinite variations across 9 different biomes, ensuring no expedition feels like the last. Enemies span over 20 distinct families, each with its own tactics, and there are 4 brutal bosses that must be studied before they can be mastered. The combat has been described by players as a mix of Skyrim's melee weight with the dungeon crawling pace of a roguelike, resulting in an experience where every encounter matters because the cost of failure is real. It costs $34.99, and the studio continues working on expanding content toward version 1.0. If you enjoy the feel of Diablo 4, but want something that puts you right in the action, looking into every monster's eyes before finishing it off while adding real roguelite pressure to every run, Daimon Blades is a name that deserves to be on your radar now. Vaultbreakers is an isometric extraction ARPG with PvE and PvPvE modes, where the central loop is simple and addictive. Enter the Dragon Vault, hunt for powerful artifacts, and get out alive. either alone or with up to 4 players. The project, formerly known internally as Project F4E, attracted so much attention that even Square Enix joined as an investor in 2025. What immediately catches my eye is the dynamic world that reacts to what players do within it. It's not a static dungeon, it's a living environment. Other players can open caves, create infected zones, or trigger special events that change the map in real time for everyone in the same session. This means the same run will never be like the previous one, not just because of different enemies, but because players' actions are constantly shaping the territory. For those used to Diablo 4's seasonal events, this is a step further into a much more unpredictable level. The champions are another strong point, and each plays radically differently. You have classes like the Hearthguard, who is a tank focused on protection, and the Lightning Caller, who uses electricity to create chaos on the battlefield. Beyond these class choices, there is a robust build customization system via loot, crafting, and artifacts, meaning 2 players using the same champion can end a run with completely different styles. To add even more chaos to the mix, there are changelings, creatures that transform and keep everyone on the battlefield at a constant level of alertness. The Haven is the base between runs and acts as that rest and preparation space every good ARPG needs. That's where you organize loot, build upgrades, prepare for the next dives into the Dragon Vault, and track long-term progression. The game also uses unstable portals as entry and exit points, creating a strategic rhythm where deciding when to extract is as important as knowing how to fight. This combination of a manageable base and high-risk missions is the heart of what makes the progression loop so satisfying for those who enjoy feeling constant growth between sessions. What has already been shown has passed through the filters of several content creators and a heavyweight publisher like Square Enix, which says a lot about the project's potential. If you like Diablo 4, but always wished it had that human, unpredictable factor of other players competing for the same items as you, Vaultbreakers is the name you'll want to remember when the release date appears.
What is your purpose here?
Deadhaus Sonata is a free-to-play, third-person narrative action RPG focusing on co-op for up to 6 players, promising to throw you straight into the heart of a gothic Lovecraftian world called Nogosoa, following a cosmic war between elder gods that created the House of the Dead. What personally hooks me most is that this game is signed by Dennis Dyack, the creator of Legacy of Kain and Eternal Darkness, meaning someone who already knows how to work well with dark narratives, horror, and an atmosphere of total decay. In Deadhaus Sonata, you aren't just another hero with a loot system, you are a steward of the House of the Dead, with choices that shape your legend and affect the world around you. This is quite different from the purely vertical loop of Diablo 4. Here, there is political weight, intrigue between houses, and an ancient myth influencing everything you face. The classes are all non-human. Vampires, revenants, banshees, ghouls, liches, wraiths, wights, etc. And the game has been described as an undead power fantasy where you literally feed on the life of enemies to grow stronger. Combat is fast, visceral, and designed to let you devastate entire hordes with magic, melee, and raw abilities. And the humor is very much Monster Among Men, with you being the true anomaly in the setting. If you enjoyed the feeling of having a ruthless assassin build in Diablo 4, this game pushes that to an even more extreme place. Conceptually, Deadhaus Sonata is half roguelike and half living world. Missions called Sojourns bring different objectives: killing, finding relics, surviving, etc. Levels feature procedural generation, and the deck and skill upgrade system grows as you play, making the game deeper over time. The hub is called Corpse Hold, a base where you organize loot, build your skill deck, dive into lore via chronicles, and plan the next dive, reinforcing the narrative and immersive way of building your character, far from an ARPG of just numbers and colored icons. For those who enjoyed Diablo 4 and want an ARPG with a gothic horror face, more focus on narrative, and choices that affect the world, and still have that legacy of Cain nostalgia, Deadhaus Sonata is one of the titles you need to keep an eye on in the coming months. If you became addicted to the style of Diablo 4, with hordes of enemies, colorful loot, and builds that change the way you play, Shattered Realms fits like a glove, because the marketing and previews themselves classify it as a dark fantasy ARPG in the style of Diablo, just with a hint of roguelite and a broken world. The game will send you through fragmented lands, tearing shards from a destroyed world, battling hordes of corrupted enemies, and using all of this to build a character that grows with each run, maintaining the same dark atmosphere and constant reward that makes the genre so addictive. The central concept is very direct. You traverse the Shattered Realms, collect power, skills, and equipment, and try to survive in a world that isn't just a map, but a collection of colliding planes and dimensions, which should provide much more variety than a standard traditional top-down ARPG. The game is described as a fast-paced roguelite with procedurally generated content, unique bosses, and heavy build customization, which is excellent for those who want to experiment with many playstyles without being stuck to a single path or specialization. For those who enjoy the structured endgame of Diablo 4, the idea of a game that starts in early access and grows with the community is very interesting, because you can follow the construction of the meta, bugs, and dynamics from the beginning. Another strong point announced is the system of guardians and new skills you unlock, promising an additional layer of progression beyond normal loot, creating a sense of power evolution that starts light and explodes in more advanced runs. The combination of loot, upgrades, and deep build customization is exactly what makes players migrate from one ARPG to another after endgame exhaustion. And the fact that Shattered Realms has this in its DNA from its announcement shows the studio understands the base it wants to attract. Those who love Diablo, Grim Dawn, and other games, where every run leaves you a bit stronger, and with new skill combination possibilities. If you've spent hundreds of hours hunting loot in Diablo 4, I have a recommendation that will take you by surprise. Today's game is Blightstone from independent studio Unfinished Pixel, and I need to be honest from the start, it is not a frenetic button-mashing action RPG. In fact, it is a turn-based tactical RPG and dark fantasy roguelite. But why does a Diablo fan need to know this title? Because it captures exactly that heavy atmosphere, the complex build construction, and the feeling of facing a world that wants to destroy you at any cost, transforming all of it into a pure and addictive strategy experience. The premise is intense and reminds me a lot of the urgency of playing in hardcore mode. The world is collapsing, swallowed by a terrible corruption, and your main mission is to escort the Earthglass Crystal to the Infernal Rift to destroy the Demon Lord Korgol. The detail that changes the whole dynamic is that you must protect this crystal with your life, for if it is destroyed, your journey ends right there. This creates constant tension with every new encounter, making you think very carefully before taking any step on a procedurally generated map. Combat is where Blightstone truly shines and differentiates itself from most tactical games. Forget those limited floor grids. The game offers free movement through the arenas, meaning positioning and environmental control are your greatest weapons. You can hide your heroes in tall grass or set it on fire to stop enemy advancement. It is also possible to lure monsters into water and amplify the damage of electrical attacks, creating a level of environmental interaction that greatly rewards those who like to think about elemental synergy. Since we are talking about a roguelite, death is part of the process, but the game knows how to reward your effort. You manage a group of heroes, choosing from varied classes like hunters and fighters, and must deal with cruel status effects like bleeding, poison, and burning during battles. With every failed attempt, the marks of your journey fuel continuous progression at the camp. That's where you unlock new skills, strengthen the crystal, and adjust your team for the next descent into the abyss, creating that wonderful cycle of trying, dying, and returning much stronger. Blightstone entered early access on Steam at the beginning of 2026, costing around $16, and has already been attracting the attention of those who enjoy tactical challenges. For a studio that previously focused on sports and puzzle games, Unfinished Pixel delivered an incredibly well thought out, dark adventure. If you need to give your mouse a rest after so many hours in Diablo 4 Seasons, but want to remain immersed in a dark fantasy universe with deep mechanics and punishing combat, this is a title that very much deserves your attention.